this next story says, this is a no-brainer, right? Now, before we dive in, just a quick reminder. This video is for informational and entertainment purposes only, and should not be considered financial advice. Our full disclaimer is shown here and on our website. Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of Finance with Anthony. We're going to be tackling two main topics today. The first one is handling the crazy job market right now. So the job market is in a crazy place right now. There's a lot of layoffs out there. There's people that are just burnt out mentally. The job market overall is not in a very good place. But we're here to navigate that together and figure out what best practices are for this kind of job market. The next thing is, hey, I just bought a home, but something unexpected came up. What do I do? These are the two main topics that we're going to be covering today in our Finance with Anthony episode. So let's dive into some stories right here on the the personal finance Reddit and see, how we can handle these. This very first story says, bought a house 2 years ago. Income situation changed. Can't afford mortgage anymore. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that. I tried to get better jobs with better pay, but it's just not working. I'm worried about foreclosure and losing a lot. If I try and sell, how do I go about paying the mortgage and, everything? I'm kind of lost. Bought the house at 23 with the help of my mom and to help her get out of an abusive relationship. She up and bounced back to her awful ex, and now I don't know what to do. I'm at a loss and I don't want to ruin my future and everything, but I just cannot afford the mortgage payments anymore. I already contacted my mortgage company and see if we could refinance or anything, and it wouldn't bring down the payment down enough to where I could afford it. Please, any advice would be warmly welcome. Just lost and don't know what to do. Edit. I have tried to find a roommate and cannot find one. I tried Facebook Marketplace and all sorts of other spots. Tried varying rent rates and everything. I live in a very small, out-of-the-way, small town, so not a lot of people moving here. So, let's actually discuss what's going on here. So, in a lot of cases, sometimes you'll get priced out of your mortgage. And you're probably asking yourself, how does that happen if we get a fixed interest rate? It actually happens, with various reasons. In this case, the person who actually got the home, used someone else to help them get to the home. That's the first thing. The next thing is naturally, your property taxes and your insurance rates will go up. What does that do? It increases something called your escrow. Your escrow is an account that your bank holds in order to pay your necessary expenses for you to use the home. So this will be like the insurance and the property taxes. So as these items go up, what does that do? It raises your mortgage, basically how much you pay on your mortgage. So this is an easy way for you to be priced out of your home, especially if your job doesn't give you any pay raises, which has happened, fun enough, in a lot of jobs these days, where people have not gotten any pay raises made for 2 or 3 years. Maybe your bonuses got decreased. There's a lot of things that can happen in your job that can cause you to not be able to keep up with your mortgage or inflation in general. And on top of that, God forbid, you might even get laid off. There's a lot of reasons why, you might get priced out of your home. Now, in these cases, overall, you could try house hacking, which is what this individual did, to try to find a roommate. But if that all fails, what my recommendation is, if you can't afford the home that you're living in, I would rather you sell it. So sell it, get it out the way before you go into foreclosure. Because the worst thing you can do is go into foreclosure, have that on your record, and not even be able to rent a room. Because one of the first things people are going to check is your credit score. And your credit score is significantly impacted when you have foreclosure or bankruptcy on there. And sometimes it will drive it down to like maybe the 500-600s, which people see as a risk. Especially if you have foreclosure on your records. They're going to say that you're not someone who's good with money, sadly. Even if you are, there's a lot of assumptions that are going to be made about you. So it's better you sell your home before you get foreclosed on. But if you do have the ability to refinance, that's great. But one thing I will warn everyone out there, if you're buying a home right now, be prepared. A lot of your realtors are going to tell you that you can love the home and date the rate. I fell for this myself, and it's not true. It is not true, and I'll tell you why. I thought that within a year or two, my rates would go down significantly in terms of like the market would get better, rates would continue to plummet down. It didn't. It's pretty much where it was a year ago, and it doesn't seem like the market is so uncertain right now that it doesn't even seem like interest rate cuts are coming like anytime soon in a significant way. So in most cases, I am the rule of thumb of like usually I'll refinance once it's like 2 or 3% less than what I did. So nowadays be very careful of what you think about in terms of like hey, I'm only gonna have this rate for like a year. Don't think that. There's gonna be times where you might even have to hang on to the rate 3 to 5 years before it even makes sense to refinance because of all the fees that come with it. So overall, think about this very carefully before entering into a home. Just say like, hey, this is going to be my life for the next 3 to 5 years. And then when the refinance opportunity comes, that's great. That's like gravy on top. But in the meantime, if you can't afford it, don't go into it. Because the worst thing you want to do is lose your job, lose your home, and then not even have the ability to buy a home another time because of just how bad things are getting as home prices continue to go up and things just continue to get worse. The worst thing you want to do to yourself is to have to start from zero. Not that you can't, but I'm saying it's going to be a lot more difficult nowadays to even be able to buy the same home that you bought even just a year ago, 2 years ago. Things just continue to increase, and overall, we don't see it dying down, especially with how the economy is panning out. So, sorry about all the doom and gloom, but I just want to make very clear that whenever you're making a very strong financial situation, just buying a home, make sure you do your research, make sure you're looking yourself and really figure out what it is you want to do before you make that purchase. So let's move on to the next one. This next one is the 1% of home value maintenance cost per year accurate in people's experience? I bought a 1972 house about a year and a half ago that had been fixed up with major repairs already done, like sewer, roof, foundation, flooring repairs. Even still, between siding needing replacement, tree trimming, slab leak, gutter install, and other costs, we're out pretty much $17K in 18 months. They feel like one-time costs that hopefully will stop at some point, but they keep happening, lol. So we're way over the 1% rule. Should that be expected the first year or two? Then it diminished, or is my whole old house just going to be a money pit? So let's talk about this. So usually when you're buying an older home, which is at least 30 years old, be prepared to be spending usually on average a little bit more in the first couple of years than you have in your entire life. And now the reason for that is very simple. Usually when someone buys a home, let's say they bought it in 1970, they probably kept it in around the same condition that they have for the past 50 years. The piping's out of date. There's going to be a lot of things that are really out of date in 50 years that the seller is not going to disclose to you, and even an inspector is going to, they can do their best to kind of navigate as much as they can, but of course they can't see through walls. They can't see through every single thing that's going to be wrong with the home. So take it with a grain of salt when the inspector says, "Yep, everything looks generally looks fine." So there's going to be times where like your pipes burst. There's going to be times where your pipes burst. There's like damages, the roof's leaking. All these little things are going to start piling up, especially when you first get your home. But once you start fixing it, usually there's like a certain shelf life for each thing. Usually roofs, to my understanding, I think last 10 to 15 years. So every 10 or 15 years, you need to replace your roof. So everything has a depreciable value over a certain period of time that needs to be replaced. So that's why the 1% rule is there, in order for you to actually save for these timelines of when things break down. Instead of them being like, oh my gosh, it's $20,000 or $30,000 to replace my roof, but I don't got the money. That's why you gotta save a portion of your funds for these kinds of major repairs. Hey, and that's what the emergency fund is for, guys. Make sure you got your emergency fund in there. So let's move on to the next one. This next story says, this is a no-brainer, right? My current auto loan is $286 a month at 11% interest rate with a total loan amount of $13K, and I have 63 months left. I have a 750 plus credit score and got offered to refinance my auto loan at 6% for same term length, savings me of estimated $94 a month. Pull the trigger, right? Am I missing any downside? So the one thing I would say is, before you even pull the trigger on a refinance, think about what is it going to cost to refinance something. So there's always a cost to refinance a loan. In some cases, a mortgage could be between $3,000 to $20,000 just to actually refinance your mortgage. In some cases, I'm assuming that a car loan will be like $2,000 to $5,000 in order to refinance it, as as the finance cost to refinance. Now, you need to then calculate, am I actually going to pay off my loan in 63 months, or am I going to pay it off in 30 months? Especially like if you start making extra payments towards it. So really, you need to really press the numbers and say, like, am I going to pay off this loan in 63 months? If I am, then the $94 per month does seem enticing. Because in the long term, you might actually save, you might recoup some of that finance cost that you paid when you did the refinance. Now, if you're not planning to actually pay off the loan, if you are planning to pay off the loan right away, then maybe a refinance doesn't make sense. Especially, as you pay off more and more of your principal, the interest is going to go down and more is going to go towards your principal. That's very common for most, for most loans, for most mortgages. So really think about what your long-term plan is and, what you're really going to do. So you got to crunch the numbers, guys. Crunch the numbers. So let's move on to the next story. Hello, everyone. My name is Anthony, and I'm the host of TheLostSanctuary. I hope you've been enjoying our content so far. And if you have, please feel free to like and subscribe. Also, we have our website up here, and we also have some socials down here. And as always, leave your comments down below. Would I be an idiot to leave my job right now? I'm a 51M with a fairly specialized set of skills that has been in high demand for the past few years. I work for the US government, and you've been following the news, things aren't great there right now. My job might actually be safe. I kind of want to quit and maybe find another job, or maybe just take the summer off and reassess, or finally follow my dreams. Here's the thing, my whole life I've sought financial security, and I've never been unemployed. I've always wanted to do creative things like writing or be an entrepreneur, but I stuck to the salary plus benefits jobs because I wasn't willing to take the risk. So now here I am, I have $1.55 million invested between retirement and brokerage account, and have about $90K in cash. My job pays roughly $185K per year. Wow, that's pretty impressive. My wife makes about $95K. As of a few months ago, my plan was to work until I had $2.5 million and then retire. My expenses are around my expenses are around $50 to $60K per year. So that seems like a pretty comfortable buffer. But we might be heading into a worse economy in a long time. The markets are all over the place, and I don't think the 6.6 to 8% return assumption is going to apply in the near term. We might see runaway inflation, and while in normal times I'd be confident of getting a new job if I needed one, now I'd be competing with dozens of other ex-government employees with the same set of skills, and we might be heading into a recession. TLDR. I really wanted out of the 9-to-5 workforce, and I'm past ready to pull the ripcord. But my gut says I should be hanging on to my job for dear life right now. That's kind of what my gut always says, so I don't know if it's trustworthy. This is a really tough topic, guys. So I'm going to be honest with you. If you were to leave your job right now and then, decide to take like a small reprieve, like maybe 6 months, 12 months, whatever it is you want to take, which I know you've certainly earned it, think about this. The average job seeker is taking 6 to 12 months to find a job. And that's on average. There's some people that have been unemployed for 2 years, 3 years. There's people that have just given up, sadly, because the job market is just so bad right now. The employer has a lot of the power. Back then, the employees had a little bit more power. The employer has complete control of the market right now, in the sense of they have so many options of people that essentially, like, if you are like the 99, let's say 99% of the time you meet the qualification, but there's someone that meets 100%, they're going to go with the guy who makes, or the guy or girl, of course. They're going to go with the person who actually meets 100% of their requirements, because two things they have. They have time, and they have the resource pool. The pool of resources that essentially is just out there is limitless right now. There's just so many people out there who are either like currently have a job or are seeking a job, and there's people out there who are sadly unemployed and they're seeking for a job. There's so much pool of talent, such great talent out there, that even myself, if I were to, go out there and try to find a job at this moment, would probably have a hard time. I probably would be on the job market for 6 to 12 months before I would be able to land the gig. And I'm in an industry that, of course, is accounting, which in most cases, a lot of people are looking for accountants in most cases. But there's industries that maybe are a little bit more tight niche and they're not looking for as many. So, during the tough times, a lot of times sales, marketing, and HR is impacted very heavily, especially people who are talent acquisition, because people are just not, they're just like, hey, we're trying to cut costs. We're trying to, meet, the demands of our investors, especially when times are tough. So that's usually the first types of jobs they cut. Not to scare anyone out there, but this is the harsh reality that I've seen. This is the harsh reality that I've seen in the past 10 years that I've worked in accounting, and these are sadly some of the departments that usually are let go. And it's pretty sad, but it's just the nature of business. So let's move on to the next story now. Laid off and behind on mortgage and car. I was laid off almost a year ago and dwindled through my savings. I rented my house out to try and not get behind, but the people staying there haven't paid rent. So now I'm 2 payments behind on mortgage and 130 days behind on car. I called my bank to try to make payments on my car because I got a job recently, and they said I'd have to pay all $20,000 to get the car not repossessed. I'm so upset. I don't have that kind of money since I was still paying for everything while not working for months. The banks aren't being helpful, and I'm not a person who doesn't work. I've worked since I could. The market is horrible. Even now, I'm working a commission job trying to make ends meet and working Monday through Sunday. Wow, I'm sorry to hear that. I've had to do that myself. Monday through Sunday is pretty rough. I'm trying to catch up on everything. Does anyone have any advice on anything I can do? So here's some advice for if, God forbid, you yourself ever find yourself in a situation where you can't pay your mortgage, your car, whatever it is you can't pay. The first thing you need to do, and please do this, is to read your loan agreements. Basically, your loan agreements will dictate when do you actually go into default, and they call your loan. If you go into default and they call your loan, there's not much you can do. Once a lender calls your loan, you are either required to pay the full amount right away or, sell the asset and pay it off that way. There's usually not many other options, unless, you've somehow magically know someone in the company and they can kind of pull some strings for you. But overall, the first thing you need to do is read the contract, the loan agreement that you have with either your mortgage company or your auto loan, and figure out when do I actually be going to default and they're allowed to call my loan. Before that happens, go to your mortgage company or the person who lent you the money, the funds for your car, and really try to come up with a plan. Say like, hey, I might not be able to pay for the next 2 or 3 months, but I'm about to land the job and I'm going to start payments again. What can you do for me? In some cases, mortgage companies, if they're kind people, will actually push those payments out further into the future. So essentially, you won't have to pay for maybe 2 or 3 months, and then they'll just push it to the tail end of the loan. And then once you actually start making payments again, then it's as if nothing happened. Same thing for car loans. Usually it's better for you to talk to your lender beforehand, before they start to repossess your car. Because the worst thing you can do is not pay and not tell them what's going on. Because they can't read your mind. They don't know what's going on. Maybe maybe you just don't want the car anymore. Maybe that's why you stop paying. But they can't read your mind, so you have to be very transparent and clear what's going on and try to work with your lender, even if it's making lower payments in the meantime while, things get better. Even if you just pay the interest, sometimes that's fine with them. And then once you actually get back on your feet, you can start paying the principal and the interest. In this person's case, sadly, since they've already called the loan, then sadly they're going to take the car from the person, and there's not much the person can do unless they decide to sell the car and then pay off the mortgage, the loan in full, which sadly that's the only option they have. So one last thing I'll add here is, if you ever find yourself in a situation where you are laid off and you just can't find a single job in the industry that you're working in, don't be afraid to work just a normal job. I know, let's say you were an accountant, you were a lawyer, you were a doctor, whatever you were. It's okay to do Uber, do DoorDash, work at a McDonald's, be a cashier somewhere in the meantime, so at least you have something coming in. The worst that you can do is just to go through your savings like crazy and not have a single ounce of income coming in. Because what that's doing for you is actually making the timeline of when your savings get dwindled quicker. You need to have income if you really want to have the ability to survive in this economy. No income means basically life and death in this economy. Without money, we can't really do anything. As much as I hate to say it, we need money to survive. Without it, it's pretty tough out there to even have a roof over your head. So, let's get out there and survive, people, because you got this. So this will be Finance with Anthony, episode 23. I hope everyone out there has a blessed day, and adios, everyone, and good luck out there. Keep doing what you're doing. You're doing an amazing job, and I'm wishing everyone out there all the best. All right, until next time, adios.